This video is sponsored by Cake Wallet, the easiest open source wallet to store Bitcoin, Monero, and Litecoin securely on mobile and desktop devices. When buying, selling, and exchanging crypto or trading for gift cards, Cake Wallet ensures privacy and security, giving you the keys to your coins. What's up, everyone, and welcome back to the Randi Hipper Show. I'm your host, and today we have a very special guest, and we're going to break down what a Bitcoin strategic reserve is, what this means for the United States, and potentially the world. And to discuss it all, we have the CEO and co-founder of the one and only Satoshi Action Fund, Dennis Porter. Welcome to the show, or welcome back. It's been 2 years, quite a minute.
That's right, Randy. Yeah, glad to be back with you. I remember 2 years ago. It seems like it was yesterday, and so excited to be here chatting with you. And congratulations on, as I just said before the show started, surviving in the space. You've been here for 5 years, so congratulations on your 5 years.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you very much, and I appreciate everyone popping in the chat right now. If you guys could smash the like, subscribe, and share this out with friends so more people could get educated on a strategic Bitcoin reserve, that would be amazing. Now, I'm going to dive into Dennis because I know it's been almost 2 years or over 2 years since you've been on the show. So we're going to go back and rewind. Who was Dennis when you were around my age? 22-year-old Dennis, where were you at? Where did you think you were going in life?
Oh, wow. That's transporting me back to a time when things were so different. There was no Bitcoin, and I was just freshly coming off of being with my family. We'd moved to Mexico for 3 years, and I'd gotten back into the United States. And then my family moved to El Salvador, and I was out in the world all on my own, just trying to make my way, just an average American, you know, delivering pizzas, selling Cutco knives, painting houses for the summer. That was the world that I lived in, you know, because when I got out of Mexico, when I come back to the United States, it was a time when there just really wasn't a lot of opportunity in the world. There was not a lot of ways to make money. The economy was not good. So I just got to work, working as hard as I could and trying to find what I wanted to do in life, and didn't have a lot of direction. To be honest, I didn't find my way until I found Bitcoin, and we can talk about my Bitcoin journey in a moment, but that's where I was back when I was, 21, 22.
Wow. So you were actually living in El Salvador before El Salvador was like the Bitcoin cool kid spot?
Well, my parents moved there. Didn't get to live there. My family did, so they went without me. But yes, they've been there. They've been there. They've been there for 15 years.
Wow.
I only got the privilege of living in Mexico for 3 years, but they lived in El Salvador. They've been living in El Salvador, and they still live there today. And they help a lot of the young family members there, a lot of the kids there. They help a lot of women who have need help, right? Because a lot of times in those countries, there's a lot of folks that don't have the help that they need. And so what my parents will do is they will help, especially young women, and they'll help provide a safe place for them where they can be able to have it as a foundation. And then a lot of them can go on to do bigger and better things. They can get a great education. They can work and not have any fear of whether or not they're going to get taken advantage of. And so even a couple of the girls there, they're actually going through medical school because of the work that my parents have done with them. So a lot of great stuff happening down there, and very excited for what El Salvador has done in the past with Bitcoin.
Wow. So you just come from a family of lovely people that are out to help the world, because I believe you're helping the world a great deal right now regarding your Bitcoin work. So how did they feel actually about El Salvador? Because it was one of the most dangerous countries in the world, and now it's one of the most safe countries in the world. Do they enjoy it now? Do they feel safe?
Oh, 100%. I mean, it's really changed, especially in the last 3 to 4 years. The crime is at an all-time low. It's much safer. I mean, back in the day, not too long ago, you could barely even walk around at the streets at night. You'd get mugged. You could get killed. You could get robbed very easily. I was talking to my younger brother. He's moved back up to where I'm at in the Portland, Oregon area. And he was, reminding me that it was such a dark time. You really couldn't go out at night. It was very dangerous. Totally different now, way safer. You can go out at night and you can participate in the economy much, much easier. The economy is booming. They're building things all over the place. So it is very much a different place than it was just a short few years ago.
Wow, that's actually insane. I'm happy that El Salvador is a lot safer, and I think Nayib Bukele just really went on a mission to turn everything around in a way that I don't think I've ever seen a country turn around. And some parts of the U.S., I think, need that sort of help, because even New York, that's why I left. It was just getting to a point where I couldn't even walk outside anymore. I was feeling like I couldn't go anywhere without somebody else with me. It just really wasn't the same place I grew up in. So to see El Salvador make such a change and be so safe now, I have a lot of respect for the president over there and what he's done, especially with Bitcoin and being the first to be the country with legal tender for Bitcoin. So a lot of respect for them. But going back to you as well, so you were 22, you didn't have much direction. You were just grinding, doing all that manual labor, which a lot of dudes end up doing as well. So proof of work, literally sweat and tears. But then you kind of like pivoted into this more business role and you took on Bitcoin and crypto. So when did you find Bitcoin?
Yeah, in 2017, a friend of mine who I'd had for a while came up to me and he said, there's this thing I found. It's called Bitcoin. It is perfectly anonymous internet money. And I said, no way, that's not possible. There's nothing on the internet that's perfectly anonymous. And so I started to study Bitcoin, and it's the first time I ever heard the word in my life, 2017. I started studying it so that I could prove him wrong. It's always fun to prove a friend wrong and say, I got you. So I'm studying Bitcoin as much as I possibly can. And, I had to read it, really technical stuff because, you can't truly understand if something is perfectly anonymous or not unless you really dive into the technical. So I'm reading Mastering Bitcoin from Andreas Antonopoulos. I'm diving into all the podcasts. I'm listening to everything that's out there, which back then there wasn't nearly as much as there is today. We're kind of lucky to live in an era now. If you find Bitcoin today, you can find a lot of great information out there to help educate you on it. But I found what I could back then and ultimately came to the decision that Bitcoin is not perfectly anonymous internet money, which is fine. It has a lot of privacy enhancements. But when I was in there studying it to prove my friend wrong, and I did prove him wrong, but when I was in there studying it, I found so many things I loved about the technology. I found so many incredible things that really made me believe that Bitcoin is going to solve so many of the world's problems, or it's going to play a major part in solving some of the world's problems. The biggest one to me right away that struck out to me immediately was the ability for Bitcoin to bank the unbanked. There are 2 billion people, almost 2 billion people in the world today that don't have any access to traditional financial systems. They don't have a bank account. They don't have the ability to save in a currency that's stable. A lot of these currencies, they go up and down so fast that nobody wants to touch them because they don't know if they can even pay for bread the next day. And they also don't even if the currency is stable, they don't want to put it into a bank account because the governments are corrupt and the governments will just reach right into the bank account, pull it out and keep it for themselves. They will pillage the bank accounts of these people. So people don't have stable currencies and they don't have bank accounts. I mean, a lot of Americans, we get upset and we say it's hard to get ahead. And it is much harder to get ahead today than it has been before. But imagine not even being able to have a bank account. Imagine you can't even save in the local currency. What I say to people oftentimes is, we could have the next Einstein. We could have the next great thinker coming from one of these places in the world where they don't have access to financial services, but we'll never know because they were never able to buy their first textbook. They were never able to study for university, save up for university. It's so bad that people, if they want to buy a house, you can't buy a house. You have to actually build a house over time and you save up in the items that you use to build the house. So instead of saving in the money and then buying a house, you have to save up in bricks or you save up in wood. I mean, it's crazy. It's like the Stone Ages. And it's really sad that today, in this day and age, how far we've come. We can talk on the internet, we can live stream across the internet, and yet 2 billion people still don't have access to just basic banking services. So I really viewed Bitcoin as a solution to that. I know it's a solution to that, especially as we expand cheap internet and cheap connectivity across this planet for people that have never had access before to truly finally have access. That's what made me fall in love with Bitcoin. Of course, so much has happened since then, but that was my original journey with the technology.
Absolutely. And we need an inclusive system where this traditional financial system is the most exclusive thing we've ever seen in our lives. And people could say, yeah, well, you could just sign up on your phone for a bank account. Doesn't mean you could actually get it. And it depends where you live, obviously. But then you also take a look at, Lightning Network as well, relating to Bitcoin, where people don't even have to have internet to transact with Lightning. There are people in Africa with these phones that don't even have internet, but they're able to send Lightning right from person to person. So the Bitcoin provides a lot of innovative ways to send money peer-to-peer. And I also heard you mention stable coins as well as another way for people to kind of store their value in a way that is more decentralized. I mean, stablecoins aren't the most decentralized thing in the world, but being able to have something where you could store your value. People are, like, even in Argentina, experiencing triple-digit inflation. What are they going to do? The people are taking their fiat and folding it into clothing and into purses and selling it on the street because it's actually worthless. And in the U.S., I worry about that happening too, but I don't think inflation can go that far in the U.S. At least I hope not.
Randy, you're right. I often say that we need to see more stable coins, US-backed stable coins out in the world.
Yeah.
The biggest buyers of Bitcoin are dollar holders. It's a fact. You can look it up. The biggest buyers of Bitcoin are people who are already using the dollar. So even if you love Bitcoin and you think Bitcoin is the future and it's the only thing that's going to be around and it's what everyone's going to use, if you want people to use Bitcoin sooner, then they should get on the dollar, because the dollar is, people complain a lot about the dollar, but it's the best currency we've ever had. It's the best fiat currency we've ever had. It has a lot of problems, and it's, we need to focus on those problems, but it's much better than Zimbabwe or other places where it's like 10 million% inflation. I mean, it's so much better. And so it gives people the ability to be able to transact in a currency that's relatively stable, loses value over time, but then they can plan a little bit better for the future. Then they can learn to save in Bitcoin, and all of a sudden their life becomes so much better. And I've traveled a lot. Before the show we were talking about this. I hadn't traveled very many places before 2023, but because of my work, now I've gone to many different countries all across this planet, and everywhere I go, people want the dollar. Everywhere I go, people say, "Wow, I want the dollar." Even the central bankers can't get their own people to use the dollar. I was in the Republic of Georgia recently, and they said, "We can't even get anybody to use our currency. We have 90% of everything is in the dollar in the loans and how they pay back the loans." So the dollar is very popular, and we should not just get it in the hands of the bankers and the people doing the loans. We should also get it in the hands of the people. And that's what stablecoins can do. Stablecoins, US-backed stablecoins, can help us get the dollar into the hands of the people. It's not as decentralized as you said, but then again, they can see the stablecoin on their wallet, and then they can see the Bitcoin a lot easier too at that point. So I'm very excited about a world where we see the dollar and Bitcoin grow together until maybe one day one becomes the champion, but we don't need to we don't need to pick sides now. In the meantime, we can both be winning, the US, the dollar, and Bitcoin.
Absolutely. I mean, El Salvador, going back to that, is a perfect example where they're transacting in the dollar. Their 100% currency that they want to use is the dollar. And then kind of the news today shook me up a bit about El Salvador and how cryptocurrency or the Bitcoin transactions could be optional. I thought that was pretty shocking as well, but that's a whole different conversation. Though, again, it's an example that Bitcoin and the dollar do coincide with one another, and I think those are going to be the two dominant currencies going into the future, especially with the help of Lightning Network to make things cheap, fast, and simple. Do you think, because you were a part of 2017, finding out about Bitcoin, you're doing your research, and then you go and find yourself looking at Bitcoin going up to $20,000 and then coming right back down. Did that discourage you at all? Because people come in the space, or the naysayers are saying, Bitcoin's too volatile. Oh no, it's scary. But was it really that scary for you?
For me, I found it in 2017, and I had no idea it even went up and down. I found it, and I said, this is a great technology that we can use to solve some of the world's problems, and not just bank the unbanked. We can solve a lot of energy problems too with Bitcoin mining. But when I found it, I just was like, oh, this is great. It's looks like it's going to go up a little bit over time. Yep. And then it just exploded, right? And I had no idea what was going on. I thought, okay, this is it. I guess it's going to go up, forever right now. But I hadn't learned enough about the technology. And so it certainly didn't dissuade me. It actually just made me pause and say, I don't know enough about Bitcoin, and I need to know a lot more and learn a lot more. And so I started to just study quietly and study for years. I studied Bitcoin from 2017 all the way up until roughly 2020, 2021 is when I actually started to talk about Bitcoin publicly. And I would encourage a lot of people to do that. We live in a world where people make up their minds real fast about things, and people need to learn to be a little more patient and take the time to learn about Bitcoin, because there are so many things about Bitcoin that you need to know about you need to know about money. You need to know about energy. You need to know about how the financial system works. You need to know how banking works. You need to know how the payment rails work in the world. And you need to know what's wrong with them in order to know why Bitcoin is so valuable. So I continued to study for those years and eventually started speaking about it in 2020, 2021, got really popular for that because, I took the time to study the technology, and I continued to learn about the technology. But I would know, it never dissuaded me. In fact, it only emboldened me. Now, I was going to probably go all in on Bitcoin mining in 2017. Luckily, the bear market hit when it did, because maybe a few weeks later and I would have been in a bad position. But it just made me think, you know what? I don't know enough. I need to take my time, and I need to learn about this thing, especially because it's so important. And Bitcoin is so very important.
I agree 100%. And so doing your own research, DYOR, that's what I preach to every single person. Do your own research. It doesn't matter if it's Bitcoin, real estate, whatever you're investing in or whatever you're looking at, whether that's medical things as well. Do your own research. Understand what you're doing before you dive right in and make a judgment, because some people could view, okay, 2017, Bitcoin ran up to 20K. It came back down. Oh my gosh, I'm never going to touch this. It's too volatile. And then fast forward 5 years later, 6 years later, look at where we're at. So I think it's just a very beautiful time to be alive and a very beautiful time to be involved in Bitcoin. And as you're doing your own research, what did you feel about self-custody at the beginning? Because people believe that maybe self-custody isn't realistic, that people don't want to be their own bank. And that's why you really liked Bitcoin at the beginning, according to what you said earlier, because it's inclusive. You could be your own bank. You can own something that's not instantly devalued by people we didn't vote for.
That's right. Definitely, I believe in self-custody. In fact, my organization, one of the biggest things that we do is we teach lawmakers about self-custody. Our nonprofit is very active in that space, and we don't just teach them about it. We also ask them to pass protections for it. We want to see the right to self-custody. We want to see it protected all across the world, and we were the first in the world to also pass the right to self-custody into law. We did it in multiple places too. So we are very, very pro self-custody, and I certainly believe that it's maybe the most important part about Bitcoin, because if you can't self-custody Bitcoin, then you just own an IOU, and that's not real Bitcoin. And that's fine. That's fine if that's how you want to do it. But we need to be able to have access to the technology itself, true access to Bitcoin. Otherwise, we're not really using Bitcoin. We're just using the old system. And the old system is a world of IOUs. So people feel comfortable with that. They feel comfortable with the IOU system that we live on. When you put your money in the bank, you don't own the money anymore. The bank owns the money, and they have to technically give it back to you. But sometimes they don't. Sometimes they collapse, and that happens. And it happens actually pretty regularly. And it's going to happen again in the future. So if you don't, but the one benefit of the current system we live on is, if they give you an IOU and they fail, the bank fails, they go away, a lot of times there's ways to get the money back to you. But in a Bitcoin system, it's very different.
Yeah.
If you get your Bitcoin taken away from you, you lose your Bitcoin, someone, an exchange collapses or a bank collapses that's holding your Bitcoin, and they lose the Bitcoin, you can't get the Bitcoin back. The Bitcoin is no backsies. This is what I commonly say. In the fiat system, the dollar system, if you send someone a transaction and it was a fraudulent transaction, the bank can say, okay, we're going to reverse that and get you your money back. That's not how Bitcoin works. And that is scary to some people, but it's also very, very important, because that is a part of the whole system that allows Bitcoin to be so valuable. There's only 21 million Bitcoin forever, never going to be more. And so we can't just magically make up more Bitcoin to be able to get you your Bitcoin back. We can't fix the system that way. So it does require, if people want to use Bitcoin in self-custody, you got to be a little bit more responsible. You got to have a little bit of personal responsibility, but it actually is such a valuable thing if you can self-custody it, because you own your own destiny, you own control, and you have total control over your Bitcoin, and no one can touch it. And that's a really special thing to say. No one can take it from me, because in the world that we live in today, pretty much everything can be taken from you at any point, but not Bitcoin if you do the self-custody the proper way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That was such a statement, that you control your own destiny. And I believe in that 100%. Being in Bitcoin and you knowing that this is something that, okay, I'm responsible for, and that it's really mine. Because when you think about it, nothing is really yours. Like, the house you're in could be seized. And even I heard something a year or two ago about banks taking private land because they want to do some ESG stuff with it. It's just something that just makes you think, what can you really do with your assets? And then even if you have a house and you want to move it to a different place because it's a safer place to live, for example, you can't just pick up your house and move it. But if you have Bitcoin, you could just take your Bitcoin, have it in your cold storage wallet, and move right on out and do what you need to do with it. It's actually digital property. Do you align with that thought of digital property?
Yeah, 100%, of course, because, and think about it this way too, you brought up the house example where you'd have to sell your house if you wanted to move and put it over here. A lot of people use real estate as a way to save and to grow their wealth. But think about all the costs that go into a house and all the risk that's there. You got to pay for house insurance. You got to pay your mortgage, which has interest, sometimes very high interest these days. And there's all these risks. There could be a flood, there could be a hurricane, there could be some act of God. And a lot of times these insurance companies, they don't cover it. They say they do, and then they don't. And so you don't have that problem with Bitcoin. Bitcoin is digital property. Nothing can touch it. you have no insurance for it. You don't need to, and it's free to store. You can store it forever for free. All you need to do is get a small wallet. Sometimes you get a free one, or you can pay $50 and get a nice one, right? Like, but it's
Yep.
once you get the wallet, even if you spend the $50, it's free forever to store it that way. You never have to touch it ever again. There's all sorts of costs that go into your house. You gotta get a new roof every 20 years or 10 years. You gotta paint it every 5 to 10 years. Very expensive to hold your value or your wealth in real estate. Whereas with Bitcoin, it's extremely cheap. And it's even, let's compare it even to gold, because people call it digital gold often as well. Gold is very difficult to transport. If you have a lot of gold, I mean, if you've ever picked up a gold coin or a gold bar, it's very heavy. You can't transport it very easily, and it's very expensive to transport and very risky because people could take it from you.
Yeah.
Additionally, it can be very expensive to store too. You know, a lot of people won't even store their gold because it's so risky to do it at your own house and so expensive. And so they'll have someone do it for them. And so Bitcoin is not like that. Bitcoin is free to store. You can store it forever. It's easy to transport. You can even just let's say you even live in like a crazy dictatorship, really authoritarian government type of place. You can just memorize 12 words and you can walk around and no one even knows you have any Bitcoin. So it is truly an incredible asset, and is one that people really need to take a serious look at when they're learning about how to properly store their wealth.
Absolutely. And I just want to let you know that someone in the chat, his name is Golden, and he's an OG Bitcoiner. And he said, I just donated 1 Bitcoin to Satoshi Action Fund.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah,
Wow,
take a
thank
look
you
at
so
the
much.
YouTube chat. So he really likes you and he likes what you're doing. So he just donated 1 Bitcoin to you. I'm sure he's going to want to get in touch with you as well. He's an OG Bitcoiner that has done a lot in the space. But wow, that was mind blowing that you just got a 1 Bitcoin donation live on the show. So let the record show.
I can confirm that it did come through. So I can see it over here on my computer. I can see it on my computer. It's real. That's very kind of you, sir. And thank you very much. That will certainly go a very long way to helping us achieve our mission. You know, I often tell people at Satoshi Action, we are one of the most efficient per dollar spent. You know, we try really hard not to spend the Bitcoin too, and save it as much as we can. You got to spend the dollar first. But we are the most efficient per dollar or Bitcoin spent. Nobody gets done what we get done for the amount of money we have. And people often tell me, they say, how are you doing this? How is this possible? It's because we deeply care about the Bitcoin. We deeply care about the technology. We've cared about it for a long time. And also we have the best team. We're a small team, but we're a great team. You know, a lot of times people, they hire these big teams of people, makes them feel special, makes them feel like they can get a lot of things done, but they don't get anything done. You know, and there's no one in the world, no group in the world who has passed law in multiple jurisdictions to protect the right to self-custody, to protect the right to mine, to protect peer-to-peer transactions, and to protect the right to run a node. We've done it, and we've done it. We're going to do it again. And we're also, in my opinion, going to be the first in the world to nail down strategic Bitcoin reserves across this country. We've got at least 10 states that are going to be introducing this legislation, not just Pennsylvania and Texas. We got another one actually today, later today. It's going to happen. And you guys got to tune in. It's going to be on the Twitter Spaces here, just a couple hours, 2 p.m. Eastern time. Looking forward to it. So whoever, you know, I gotta look up, I don't know if they want to share their name publicly. They wrote down their information, but I'll certainly reach out to you. Thank you so much for the donation. That really does mean a lot. That covers a lot of work for us, and we can get a lot of work done with 1 Bitcoin.
Wow. Thank you so much, Golden. And this is going to a beautiful place. And if you guys want to donate as well, I do have every link in the description, but I'm going to throw it in the chat. SatoshiAction.io. Please make sure you guys are donating to Dennis and his cause, because this is someone that's self-made and somebody that is hardworking. And I've watched Dennis grow. Dennis has watched me grow up as well. And there's no one I'd rather be associated with or be friends with in the space. You're just an amazing person, Dennis. And thank you to Golden for donating 1 whole Bitcoin live on this show to somebody that's really going to do good things with it. And that's why I really love Bitcoin and crypto, because you could see that this just occurred. You could see what you guys are doing, the proof of work as to what is going on with Satoshi Action. Now, let's actually jump into that while people are here and they're hype about this 1 Bitcoin donation. How did you come up with Satoshi Action Fund, and why did you decide to spearhead this initiative?
So Satoshi Action Fund really came out of a concern. You know, I tell people a lot of times, back in 2022 and 2021, we were not so happy with where we were as a government and as a country. A lot of Bitcoiners were sitting around in the middle of the shutdowns. You know, they said, wow, the government can really move fast and do some stuff that, you know, could constrain us. You know, whether you agree with it or not, the way they did it, it was very fast. And So we were worried maybe they're going to do that with Bitcoin. Maybe that will happen to Bitcoin too. And everyone started saying, we got to move to El Salvador. We're going to leave the country. We're going to go underground. And I just really sat there and I thought, that's just such a negative way to think. And I don't like to live in a negative mindset. It's not healthy for me. It's not healthy. I think nobody should live in a negative mindset. We should all be very optimistic. I like to be irrationally optimistic. So I said, you know what? Actually, I think we should go out there and we should fight back and we should educate lawmakers and regulators about this technology, because I really believe if they understood what Bitcoin was about and what it could offer, and they didn't have to live in fear, that they would really want to adopt Bitcoin. And that actually played out really well, because we've been able to educate lawmakers and regulators all over this country. And every time we sit down with them, the first thing they always say is, wow, no one's ever said it. No one's ever told us what Bitcoin can do. We thought it was for criminals. We thought it was for scammers. We thought that the Bitcoin mining was going to boil the oceans. Like, they're actually surprised. Nowadays they hear it all the time, so it's less of a surprise. But back in 2022, nobody was talking to the lawmakers the way that we were talking to the lawmakers about Bitcoin, and they realized, oh, the media is wrong on this one. And so we've had so much opportunity to change the course of history for Bitcoin in a way. I think we'll let the history books decide how much we made an impact, but I think we made a pretty big impact. We have been able to educate or impact every single lawmaker in this country. There's over 7,900 lawmakers in the United States. You got 7,500 state lawmakers and about 500 of them in Washington, D.C. And we've impacted them all. We've had letters written to every single one of them. Now, recently we did a letter writing campaign, and 190,000 letters went out to every single state lawmaker in the country. So we had lawmakers who were getting like hundreds of letters about Bitcoin and Bitcoin strategic reserves. We've also went to Washington, D.C., and we hand-delivered by hand. Like, we walked around, like there was a dozen of us, and we hand-delivered Bitcoin books to every single member of Congress. So every single one got a book. Some of them got multiple books. And it was a great group of people that did that came together for that. It was a very, very, very special moment. And it was awesome because, like Senator Lummis and Congressman Davidson, like these people are very pro-Bitcoin. And when they knew that we were handing out the Bitcoin books, they could turn around now and say, hey, to the other lawmakers, did you read your Bitcoin book yet? Congressman Davidson, he said that to me. He said, well, I'm glad you handed out so many Bitcoin books, because now I can go to every office and say, did you read your Bitcoin book yet? So we've done a lot on the education side, and we've done a lot on the policy side. We've introduced legislation to protect the rights of Bitcoiners in 30 states, or excuse me, in 30 times in 20 states. We've passed those bills into law 4 times, and we're just getting started. We are going to continue fighting for Bitcoin for many years to come.
And what was the first piece of legislation that you guys had passed? What year was that? And how did it feel to have your first piece of legislation?
Oh, that was a special moment. That was very special. A lot of people doubted whether we could do it or not. That was the other thing too.
Haters, man.
Not only was there, we need more positive people in this world. Sometimes the doubters fuel you, though. The doubters, they really give you the extra,
extra
urge
jab.
to go prove them. Yeah, a little extra excitement to prove them wrong, right? Because they say you can't do it, and then you do it, and there's nothing more special than that. So the first bill we passed, I got pretty emotional about it, because I was very happy to see that the strategy that we had chosen, the approach that we were taking, was actually paying off. And it's a big thanks also to the team, right? We have an incredible team at Satoshi Action. Eric Peterson is our policy director. We couldn't do without him. He crosses all the T's, dots all the I's. We've got a new team member, Tom McCarthy. He's been on our team for about 6 months now. He's doing the development. So donors that donate, we have him interact with them as much as we can. That way that I can be out here doing this. I can continue to talk about why, people need to support us and what the work that we're doing. But Tom does a great job of making sure that we, give back to the donors and spend time with the donors and interact with the donors in a really positive way. And then, of course, we also have our 2 co-founders, who spent a decade in Washington, D.C. A lot of strategic advice coming from them. And it's funny because they spent a decade in D.C. and they're like, get away from D.C. We gotta spend time in the States. So we have this great team, and we couldn't do without them. But certainly that first bill we passed into law was a special moment. We passed it into law in Arkansas, and funny enough, we turned right around and we passed the second one in Montana. So it was not a one-hit wonder. A lot of people, they worry about us being a one-hit wonder, and now we've got 4 bills we passed into law. And we are leading the entire space on strategic Bitcoin reserve legislation as well.
That is incredible. And so I want you to actually dive into a strategic Bitcoin reserve. What does that exactly mean? What is a strategic Bitcoin reserve?
So that's a great question. I think we should take a step back first, though. Take a step back and look at what types of reserves we have. Back it up.
Back it up.
we have a lot of reserves in this country. People will be surprised the things that we have reserves for. I mean, we even have a cheese reserve. So let's put that into context. Like we have a cheese reserve. If we have a cheese reserve, I think we can have a Bitcoin reserve. But the reason we have reserves, and we've got a number of them, we've got a rare mineral reserve, we've got an oil reserve, we've got a gold reserve, we've got an ammo reserve, we've got a food reserve. We have a reserve for pretty much everything. Anything that we would need in a time of need. We have these reserves to protect ourselves. They're like shock absorbers for when bad things happen. We don't like when bad things happen, but bad things do happen, and we got to be prepared for them. And that's the government's job. Everybody agrees, even the people that don't like the government and they want to see less government, even those people agree that the bare minimum job of the government is to protect the people from things they can't protect themselves from.
Yeah.
And one of those things is when these really bad things happen. So we all know what happened. One of them recently. We had a epidemic. We had a pandemic. We had closures everywhere. And during that time, it was so bad that we didn't prepare for it. We didn't have the medical supplies. And we have medical supply reserves, but they were not adequately filled. And during that time, it was so bad that we had doctors and nurses wearing garbage bags. We had doctors and nurses wearing garbage bags. It's a travesty. It's sad. The greatest country in the world, maybe in human history, we were not prepared. And we had doctors and nurses wearing garbage bags. So that's one reason why you need a reserve, and you need to protect your reserves and make sure that they stay up to date, because when bad things happen, and again, we don't want bad things to happen, but they do every 10, 20, 30 years, really bad things happen, and it's the government's job to take care of those things. So that's one main reason why we need those reserves. Another one is, you got a lot of geopolitical stuff going on, and we have the oil reserve for that purpose. We didn't have an oil reserve forever. We created it in the 70s. We created it because a bunch of countries that don't like America didn't like what we were doing in the Middle East. And they said, you know what? We're going to stop giving you any oil. And it was horrific. We had lines all around the corner for people to get gas. They were even certain days you couldn't even buy gas. That's how bad it was. And there was rampant inflation because the price of energy was going through the roof. It caused inflation, and then it caused stagflation. The economy was brought to the brink. And the United States looked around and we said, wow, this is all just because they just said that they're not going to give us the oil anymore. So what did they do? They enacted a massive plan to be able to combat that type of aggression from these other countries that don't like us. They created a strategic petroleum reserve, a strategic oil reserve in this country. And it's a huge, we've used it many times, a huge reserve. And we build it up when times are good, and we add oil to it. And then when bad things happen, or when we're in the middle of a crisis, we actually recently used it when we had the war in Ukraine with Russia and all the problems with oil and energy then. We can deploy it, and it saves the American people. It saves the price of gas. I mean, imagine what the price of gas would have been if we hadn't deployed it recently. It could have gone to like $10 at the gas pump. And that's really bad, because then once the energy goes up, everything goes up, because everything is energy is the base layer of a lot of things. So we have that petroleum reserve. We deploy it, and we do it to help protect the country. And now going back to Bitcoin, we have Bitcoin as a potential strategic reserve. It can act as a financial shock absorber when really bad things happen. We saw what happened when, we shut everything down. We shut everything down. We shut it down, in my opinion, a little too hard. And we shut it down, and it caused really big problems in the economy. And we saw Bitcoin, what did it do? It went way up because it's a financial shock absorber. So we need Bitcoin as a financial shock absorber, especially at the states, because the states were the hardest hit. Federal government, they don't care. They have the money printer, right? They have the money printer. They can increase the debt all they want. They're not accountable, and they can do anything they want with the money. But the states don't have that. The states don't have a money printer. In fact, it's unconstitutional for them to have a money printer. And so they are really getting hit hard now. They have had all this inflation, all these costs go up, and they have the same budget. They have the same amount of money they can spend, but everything is more expensive now. I was recently talking in Washington. I said this before the show. I was in Washington State talking to a bunch of folks there at a meetup, and I looked it up. I was like, I wonder what the budget problem is here, if they have one. They have a $12 billion budget deficit over the next 4 years, and it's all because of inflation, all because of the costs going up. But what would have happened if they just had a little bit of Bitcoin on their balance sheet, just a little bit? All they would have needed to do is have maybe 5% or 10% of Bitcoin on their balance sheet. And not only would they not be experiencing these deficits, they would probably have a little extra money as well. So Bitcoin can really act as a financial shock absorber for our governments, who are there to protect us from these types of events. So it's their responsibility to do that. And we think that they should. And that's why we have at least 10 states that are going to be doing this. And hopefully we'll pass many of them into law. We think we're going to pass at least 3 into law, and 1 is a near guarantee, and I can talk about that in a moment. But the other reason is the geopolitical reason. This is where the federal government comes into play. We are entering, it's a difficult era that we're entering into from a geopolitical perspective. And that just means the whole world's politics, not just the US. Russia, China, Iran, they want to take away the power of the United States. They don't trust America. They don't want America to lead anymore, and they want to be the ones in the lead. And so they created this thing called BRICS, and it's bringing all these countries together to try to create a new world order and a new world power to compete with us. And, listen, I love a little bit of competition, but this is a dangerous kind of competition that we're entering into.
Yep.
Where countries that don't like us, this is not countries that are semi-friendly and just want a healthy competition.
Aggressive.
These are countries, exactly. These are countries that want to remove the United States from its position of power. And that's not good. And usually when you see these types of events take place, where there's two big groups working hard to compete and they hate each other and they don't like each other, that's when you see really bad things happen. You see World War II happen. You see World War maybe III happen. So we got to be careful. And I think that Bitcoin certainly is a tool to help be able to act as an interoperable layer between those two groups so we can reduce the hostilities. We might be entering World War III, but Bitcoin could help us prevent that because it is the Switzerland of money. It's the Switzerland of payment networks. It's permissionless. Anybody can use it. Nobody can be left out. And I think eventually, because of these hostilities between these two sides, that Bitcoin might actually become the payment layer of choice for the world. Right now, US controls a lot of it. BRICS wants to take it away, but I think Bitcoin being neutral, that is really a much better picture for the future of the world. I don't want China running the world's global economy. I certainly don't want Russia controlling it either. And if I had to choose between Russia, China, or Bitcoin, I'm always going to be choosing Bitcoin. So we need to, as you said before, it's the digital property. We need to jump out and grab the digital property for as cheap as we can right now. We've heard sailors say recently, 75% of the country, we bought it for like $50 million. Because we got it early. We got in early before everyone realized how valuable the United States was. We can do the same exact thing with Bitcoin. We can jump out and get in the front. And the first thing that we should do 100% without a shadow of a doubt is we should end the U.S. Marshals auctioning of the Bitcoin, and we should keep the Bitcoin in the United States. We should keep it and we should hold it for as long as we possibly can.
It's actually brutal what's happening in these other countries, especially, China has the digital yuan, which is essentially a coupon, and they could have your money expire. If you don't have the right social score, you can't charge your car, you can't go buy food. You're essentially like X'd out of life, and they could starve you essentially. We even saw that in Canada with the trucker protest as well, where people were donating money and the government said, hey, you can't have that money because it's not something we agree with. That's horrifying. But then you also have Vladimir Putin in Russia that's saying, Bitcoin is cool in the fact that nobody can stop Bitcoin, so why don't we embrace it? So even countries like Russia that we don't politically align with do align with Bitcoin. And so we're going to see a lot of other countries have the same ideology. And now that the US is rumored to be a part of the space, of course, they're going to want to get on it as well. Though, besides the strategic Bitcoin reserve, I think the U.S. should be mining Bitcoin. I think there was even a study, I think it was the Pentagon a while ago, saying that countries are going to determine their rank in the world by how much hash power they have. Do you align with that?
Yeah, we absolutely need to be mining Bitcoin in the United States. I'm proud to say that we are. I think we have the most hash rate right now of any country. Not majority, but we have the most. You do need a level of decentralization of the hash rate. So I'm fine with there being some competition there, but we need to be able to have access to Bitcoin mining. And in fact, it might be a critical part of our national security because think about it this way. The miners, they decide, especially as things like Ocean. If you haven't checked out Ocean, by the way, they know that I love them. They're a really great company. They're helping to decentralize the pools because the pools are a little bit of a centralization issue with Bitcoin mining. But eventually what's going to happen in the future is you're going to see a lot of miners deciding which transactions go into the blocks. Well, if you don't have any miners in your country, and let's say all of a sudden everybody becomes very angry with the U.S. and they say, you know what, let's not let the U.S. have its transactions go through on Bitcoin. That's not good. So we got to have a good amount of hash rate at all times in the United States, just bare minimum from a national security perspective. But taking that and putting it aside, Bitcoin mining is this incredibly powerful energy technology. It is one of the most important energy technologies that we may have ever come up with in the last 20, 30, 40 years. It is the best grid balancing technology in the world, in my opinion. I don't think there is any other technology that can balance the grid the way that Bitcoin mining can. And in fact, I'm not the only one that says that. It's backed up by real credible evidence and real research that we've been able to produce. And we've produced it not just with ourselves. We've produced it with some of the best and most professional and top-ranking energy professionals in the world. including the former ERCOT CEO, Brad Jones, who was also the former CEO of New York's as well. So he's got a lot of experience, and he co-authored a paper with us, and it says that Bitcoin mining is a super powered grid balancing technology, and it is also very, very good at helping to solve the problems for renewable energy. A lot of people, they don't know. They do a great job of hiding it, but renewable energy has a lot of problems that it creates for the grid. It's a great resource. We love it. We love the clean energy. It's very cheap energy, and we want to see America lead on it. But at the same time, it does have a problem. And the problem is that wind and solar, you got to build them far away. They got to be built where the wind is strong and the sun is bright. And that's not always right where power is being bought. And so you have to actually transport the power back to cities, back to industrial parks via really, really big, what do they call, high voltage transmission lines. They're just these big, huge power lines, huge ones. You've seen them. You drive by them. The ones that are like so tall you can barely, you wouldn't even be able to climb to the top unless you tried really hard and you were a real true expert. Big, big power lines. And those things are very expensive and they're very time consuming to build. And sometimes I think you mentioned it earlier about people's property being taken away via eminent domain. You were talking about it in a different reference, but the same thing can happen with these power lines because they need to build them over really long distances where people own property. And so they take your property away from you, or they force you to have it be built. So there's a lot of problems with these lines. And so they can take decades to build. And so the renewable energy, which is a great energy resource, is just sitting there with no one buying the energy, or it's barely selling any energy. So all the energy that it could have sold, there's a term for it. It's called curtailment. It's wasted energy that no one's buying, but it's just there. And they just have to say, well, I guess no one's going to buy this energy because we can't build the lines, and batteries won't fix it because batteries will just hold it and they still don't have the line to sell it. So, and I'm a fan of batteries. I just don't think they solve this specific problem with renewable energy. So what happens? You have all this wasted energy, and it's a ton of wasted energy. Go look at California. Go look at California ISO. That is the grid for all of California, almost all of California. And they have a huge curtailment problem. In fact, this is a huge data point. They are on track to curtail more energy by 2030 than the bottom 36 nations combined. 36 countries. That's how much energy is being wasted every year. There's a 36 country worth of energy that no one's using. Bitcoin miners could be using that energy. You can take the great thing about Bitcoin miners. It's a complete waste. What you can do is you can take the Bitcoin miner, and Bitcoin miners are the opposite of wind and solar. They don't care where they are. They can be anywhere. The wind and the sun is for the wind and solar farms, and they have to be close to each other. The Bitcoin miner has no care at all. It can be anywhere in the planet where there's internet, and thanks to Starlink, you can pretty much get internet anywhere. So the Bitcoin miner can go in and it can actually custom fit to whatever the size of the site is, and it can buy up 100% of that wasted energy, ultimately supporting the clean energy and helping us move towards a clean energy future in a way that's more efficient. Because right now we're not doing it the right way. Right now, a lot of people's power bills are going up, and we're creating a lot of problems on the grid because of this. And Bitcoin mining can truly solve a lot of problems.
Imagine if the government starts mining Bitcoin on a federal level and then gets all that wasted energy, puts it towards something that's worth something, and then adds it to the reserve. Oh my gosh, mind blowing. And so when do you think we could potentially see a national strategic Bitcoin reserve? And when do you think the states are actually going to be able to pass it and get this going? Because I know Pennsylvania has a bill introduced, and Texas introduced their bill officially, and that was on Spaces. I was on that.
Yes, it was great to have you there, and thank you for being there for that Spaces. It was a first in history. I don't think anyone's ever had a bill introduced live on Twitter Spaces. Not iconic. Just Bitcoin bill. It was like the first ever. It was great to work with their office that helped us come up with that plan, and they have great people on their team over there. Chairman Capriglione, he was the one that introduced it live. It was so much fun to do it with him, alongside him. And so, yes, multiple states have introduced it, but we're going to have more. We have one later today, as I said, and then also we're going to have 10 in total, just from us, at least 10.
Amazing.
There could be
so
more.
amazing.
There's going to be more than that. I already know it because I hear little rumors. I hear a lot of little rumors out there about people trying to do it before us and compete with us, which we love to see that. But we're going to do it probably first, and we're going to do it the fastest, and we're definitely going to do it the most. So there is one state, you said, what are the odds of it passing? There is one state where it's nearly a 100% guarantee, because I'll tell you why. There's this task force that meets in the off season. A lot of people don't know this, but state lawmakers, they meet like part-time. They don't meet all year long. They'll do it for like 2 months or 3 months in most states. But in the off season, when they're not meeting, they get together, these lawmakers get together, and they say, you know what? Let's make our job a little bit easier when it comes time to go have the actual legislative cycle where we meet and vote on things. They're going to pregame. They pre-vote on the bills to see if they like them. And there's this task force in this one state where every bill that they vote on over the last several years, they've been meeting for years now, every bill they vote on and that they give the thumbs up to and they approve ultimately passes into law. They have a 100% win rate. Every single time they say they give a bill a thumbs up, the bill passes into law. Our bill just passed through that task force. And so, I mean, what are the odds that our bill over all these years is the only one that doesn't actually pass into law? I think it's very low. And that's why we believe it's a near 100% guarantee that it gets done in at least one state. And that's just one state. There's another state where there's going to be 4 bills, and they're all our bills, or that we're working with the lawmakers that are doing those bills. The reason why is because they're competing. Everybody wants to do strategic Bitcoin reserve. It's incredible. And it's really different from when we started. You know, when we started, we had to put in all this time and energy into meeting lawmakers and convincing them that Bitcoin is good, showing them the policy and working with them. And then we got to work through the process of passing it. Now the lawmakers are reaching out to us and they're competing over who's going to introduce the bill. In fact, one was really cool, interesting. This is one of my favorite ones. And this will really show you how different it is now. We had a Bitcoiner call me. He calls me. He says, I've been a Bitcoiner since 2017 and I just became a state senator. I was elected for the first time. And he said to me, I want the very first bill that I introduce for my entire career, the very first bill I introduce, to be a strategic Bitcoin reserve bill. So it is really incredible. And I'll finish here. This just toss it back to you. But we have Bitcoiners running and winning offices. And that's going to keep happening. That's the first time I've heard of it happening, but it's going to keep happening. And it's going to happen more and more and more. Where Bitcoiners who have never been elected before, that's the special thing. Because, of course, we've got lawmakers who were already elected, were already in government, who became Bitcoiners. But now we're having Bitcoiners who've been Bitcoiners for a long time, who didn't really care too much about politics or government, and they decided to run. And they have winning those offices, and then they're turning around, and they are big champ. I mean, no one's going to be a bigger champion for Bitcoin than a Bitcoiner who's been a Bitcoiner for a long time. So that is going to change the way things are done in this country, and that's going to be why I think the United States is truly going to lead on this technology for decades to come.
I think it's smart for someone to even run a campaign based on Bitcoin. I mean, we saw Donald Trump completely 180 his opinion on Bitcoin from being like, this is something out of thin air, to saying, this is real money, going to PubKey in New York City and spending Bitcoin on cheeseburgers, doing that transaction. Now people got behind him. And I think in this election cycle, we saw millions of dollars being sent to different PACs and even to candidates directly to support cryptocurrency legislation, because this is something that is going to push the United States forward. If we want to be an innovative country, we're supposed to be the country that spearheads revolutions. And instead, this administration kind of put us behind that. So now we're at a point that if you're running for office, yeah, you're going to want to back Bitcoin, and you're going to want to be a part of Bitcoin anyway, because it's the future, it's the present, it's the now. And this is what's going to make the change and put America #1 again. So I 100% agree with that. Now, you have been saying for a while that you believe that you want to race Donald Trump to the point where, okay, who's going to pass this strategic Bitcoin reserve bill first? Who's going to get this going for the country? Now, do you believe that it's a possibility that within the first 100 days that Donald Trump gets this done? And do you think you could do it faster? And how could you actually do it faster than him?
That's a great question. And, I love a little bit of competition. It's great
with
for
the president.
It's not just a little bit of fun, but it's also great for the people. The consumer,
Yeah.
They always say the consumer benefits when there's competition, and the Bitcoiner certainly benefits when there's competition over who can do Bitcoin policy first. And the president seems like he's ready to do it. He said on stage, this was his big promise. I will keep 100% of the Bitcoin, my administration's policy. This is what he says. The policy of my administration will be to keep 100% of the Bitcoin, and we'll keep it from now and into the future, and we'll keep all the other Bitcoin that we get. So the president has a very unique opportunity. He can keep all the Bitcoin. We have nearly 200,000 Bitcoin currently in the United States, and he should direct the U.S. Marshals via an executive order on day one. He should say, let's keep the Bitcoin, let's put it into the treasury, and let's keep it there as long as we can. And so we certainly came up with a model executive order that he could use. Maybe he'll use ours, maybe he'll use someone else's, or maybe he'll come up with one on his own. But the point is that we want to create these models so that we take the legwork out of the work for the office of the president. You take the legwork out of the office of any lawmaker. That's why we create models. We've created models before. We're very good at this. We create models for other lawmakers. That's how we've passed our laws before. we have our bills being used for 30 introductions over the entire country. 4 of our bills have been passed into law, and those were all based off our model policy. So it's not too crazy to think that if we create a great model for the president and he sees it and says, you know what, this is it. This is the model that I want to use. And he signs it into law. He decrees an order, an executive order, and he directs the Treasury to take into the Bitcoin that is currently in the U.S. Marshals. You know, maybe he should purchase some Bitcoin, maybe not, but bare minimum, he's got to keep the Bitcoin that we already have. And that would help him also to keep his promise that we will keep 100% of the Bitcoin.
Absolutely. And so their plan is to do 200,000 Bitcoin a year for 5 years. And even Senator Cynthia Lummis said that's conservative. And so do you think that that could actually be altered to increase it? Because I believe on that same space that you were on with her, she said that RFK was thinking 4 million. And I know RFK is going to be part of this administration as well. Do you think it's realistic to do 1 million over the course of 5 years? Do you believe that this could be increased? How ambitious do you think this administration can really be?
It's a great question. So you have Senator Lummis's bill, which we fully endorse, and it's this idea that you can buy Bitcoin and hold Bitcoin, and that they'll over time get to 1 million Bitcoin. It is a fairly conservative number, but it's based, in my opinion, if I remember correctly when I was talking to her team, it was based on how much above ground gold there is and what percentage of the above ground gold that we own. So it's matching that number. So I'd love to beat that number, but we also need to keep our expectations in check too. We just got to get something across the line, right? Like at the end of the day, we need to just create the strategic Bitcoin reserve, and we need to put the Bitcoin in there that we already have. Will we be buying Bitcoin in the future? Absolutely, we should do that. But we think that, going back to that question earlier of the competition, we think we're going to do it first at the states because we move much faster at the state level. The states are rapid. I said they're only 2 to 3 months sometimes, so they got to go real quick. You'll know by March, probably, maybe April of next year, there will be likely a bill passed into law at the state level. So Trump has a very short time window in the first 100 days. What is that, 90 days? That's 3 months, January, February, March. I mean, we're going to be working this stuff through the legislature fast. There's going to be a bill, it'll pass through the House or the Senate, and then it'll go on the other side and it'll be signed by the governor. Those things can happen very, very quickly at the state level. At the federal level, it's much harder to pass legislation. It'll take a lot longer, and we're expecting that at the federal level. But Trump that's separate from this bill from Senator Lummis. He has the opportunity as the president. He does direct the Treasury. He controls the Treasury. It's underneath the executive branch. And we think he should put it into the Exchange Stabilization Fund, which is a small fund underneath the authority of the Secretary of the Treasury. It was established in 1934 through the Gold Reserve Act. In fact, it was where, it was actually the funny part. I shouldn't say funny because it was actually a sad beginning of a sad era. It was when the fiat era began. 1934 was when we ended the gold standard. It is when we finished the gold standard. Now, we killed the gold standard off completely in 1971 with Nixon, but it was the beginning of the end for gold in 1934. And we took all the gold that was in the Federal Reserve and we put it into the Treasury. And we put it into the ESF, Exchange Stabilization Fund. So it would be very symbolic and I think a very interesting move for the thing that actually ended the gold standard and launched the fiat standard to also be the thing that begins the Bitcoin standard. It's a great opportunity for him. And if I think he might be aware of this, but it's very historic. And he's the only one, I think, who will have the shot to do it. Because if we wait 4 more years for another president, that Bitcoin will probably be auctioned off by those U.S. Marshals. That's what they're supposed to do. That's their job. I think we should end the auction. I think Trump should call for an executive order to end the auction. And I think we should put that Bitcoin into the ESF and begin the Bitcoin era.
Absolutely. And right before we head out, I really want to know what the difference is between the Pennsylvania Strategic Bitcoin Reserve and the Texas one, and what road do you think that other states would take, the Pennsylvania or the Texas route? Also, guys, please make sure you're smashing the likes and sharing this out. This is critical information.
The vast majority of the states are going to follow the Pennsylvania model. That's the model that we have been leading behind. Chairman Capriglione, he had already sort of began crafting the legislation, and then we came in to help bolster it. Our big piece of advice, because I think when we found it, it was like just donating. Like you could just donate Bitcoin to the strategic reserve that they call the strategic reserve. I don't think it's really much of a strategic reserve, though, if you just donate Bitcoin. Like how many people are really going to donate Bitcoin? So our idea, and this is the idea that we kept pushing for, was we got to have a way to let people at least pay taxes or fees in Bitcoin to help grow the strategic reserve, or otherwise you're just going to have a fraction of a Bitcoin in there. So it's not really a strategic reserve, and we came along and that was our big push, is we said we really gotta have other ways to get Bitcoin in here. Otherwise it's not much of a strategic reserve. So that's the Texas model. They want to be donations, taxes, fees can go into the strategic reserve. We certainly believe a lot of the Bitcoin miners there might pay their taxes in Bitcoin might be the first to do that, just to sort of do a PR statement at the bare minimum. But the Pennsylvania model is different. The Pennsylvania model actually allows for those various funds, and there's different funds in every state, but the various funds that operate at the state level to add up to 10% of their assets that they can be in Bitcoin. So up to 10% of those funds can be Bitcoin. We think that's a great way to start. And certainly in the following years, we're going to follow up with directives like this is how much Bitcoin we're going to buy. But we got to start, we got to take baby steps, and we got to start moving the right direction. And so we'll establish the strategic Bitcoin reserve in Pennsylvania, and then we will enable the state to add up to 10% of its funds into Bitcoin within the funds that are in the parameters of the strategic Bitcoin reserve. And then after that, once we pass that into law, we'll go back around and we will help them to be more specific with how much Bitcoin they want to put into those reserves. You know, a lot of people think you got to swing for the fences. You got to hit a home run every time. If you've ever played baseball, you can't swing for the fences every time. If you swing for the fences and it's all you ever do, you're going to strike out a lot. You know, you strike out a lot and you're going to lose. So you got to get a single, get a double, get people on base. Then you swing for the home run when it makes sense with your big hitter, or you swing for a home run when the bases are loaded and you get a grand slam. That's the way that we view policy at Satoshi Action. That's why we've been so effective at moving the ball forward, because we don't try to swing too big, but we also don't try to do it too small so no one cares, because just donations, that's not enough. That's not worth announcing. That's not worth trying to say that you created a strategic Bitcoin reserve. I think if you add the taxes in there, it gets a little bit better. But certainly we got to load the bases and then we got to swing for those home runs. And that's what we're doing at Satoshi Action as we get this bill done in Pennsylvania, hopefully other states, and then we turn around and we swing for the grand slam and we get Bitcoin added to those strategic reserves.
Absolutely amazing. I'm so bullish on you, Dennis. I'm so bullish on Satoshi Action and everything that you guys are doing, because it's grassroots and it's something that's really making an impact. And you could see that with this donation today of 1 Bitcoin from our viewer Golden, that people believe in you. People believe in Satoshi Action and the vision of Bitcoin. And I would love, as you tell us where we can find you, how we can donate, what your vision is for 2025 and going forward and over the next 4 years with the pro-crypto administration.
Absolutely. And thank you for having me on. And thank you to Golden for the donation. That is going to go a huge way. That's going to really help us at Satoshi Action. You know, we have actually a $500,000 fundraising goal, and we were already at 150. Now we're at 250. So that's huge. We're halfway there, and it's a 60-day fundraising goal. So we're not even 30 days in. We're only 20 days in. So 19 days in. So thank you so much again for the donation. That will really help us to build our strategic Bitcoin reserve and be able to help us plan way far into the future in the way that we operate as an organization, which is very important for us to be successful as a nonprofit. For people that want to see what's coming next, you know, I highly encourage them to follow me on Twitter. That's where I'm the most active. I have all sorts of stuff I'm posting about on there. We post all of our wins. We post about our Twitter spaces that we're going to be on. And it gives people a great opportunity to see what's happening. But also they can sign up for our newsletter, satoshiaction.io. A lot of great folks sign up for that newsletter and they can see what's coming around the corner before others. But my vision for 2025 is that we continue to fight for Bitcoin and win for Bitcoin in the United States. And we are better positioned than anybody else in the world to win for Bitcoin because we've done it before and we can do it again. And we're going to keep fighting to protect the rights of Bitcoiners. We're going to protect the right to self-custody, the right to mine, the right to run a node, the right to peer-to-peer transactions. And we're also going to keep fighting for strategic Bitcoin reserves because we believe that when the government is aligned with the people, that's a very good thing. And when the government owns Bitcoin alongside the people that own Bitcoin, we are on the same path and the same destiny together of fighting for Bitcoin. So certainly we are going to be passing strategic Bitcoin reserve legislation into law to ensure that not only the people are benefiting from Bitcoin, but the government is too. And ultimately we can all head towards that bright orange future together.
Absolutely. Let's orange pill the world, everyone. Let's control our own destiny. Thank you, Dennis. Guys, please go in the live chat. I have the link to the x.com for Satoshi Action Fund, and I have Dennis's Twitter in the live chat, along with satoshiaction.io, which is where you can donate. All of this is also in the description of the video. If you haven't yet, please smash a like, subscribe to the channel, share the stream out with friends so more people can learn about what's going on. Thank you to Golden for the 1 Bitcoin donation. Thank you to everybody in the chat that took the time out to watch this today and get educated. Have a beautiful day. Thank you again, Dennis. Thank you to Satoshi Action Fund. Have a beautiful day, and I will see you guys tomorrow for the Daily Zest. Have a great day. Talk soon.